Hello everyone, it's the Storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? Down under the Manhattan Bridge. Overpass. Running along the streets of Lower Manhattan, crossing over Center Street. I kept an even tempo. The sky suddenly darkened as heavy clouds covered the blue sky, like spilled ink clouding out over parchment paper. I could have turned back and avoided the storm, but I needed to get my miles in. Post the numbers. Do the work. Think of that Starbucks cappuccino and the warmed-up butter croissant that's waiting for you. I had already gone 5 miles by that point, but 6 miles was my daily minimum, and I was hurting. Right calf cramping, stitch in my side, labored breathing. Count your steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tyson is the best. Tyson can't be beat. The training was the only place where the force of my will held sway. The only thing in my control. Ever since the accident, it was even more important to stick to the plan. Keep my health intact. For without that, there was no livelihood, no finding a partner, no future family, no legacy to mark the fact I was here and alive. Without that, I was nothing but an advertising account manager in an agency. The net purpose of my life being to create desire in people's minds and associate their pre-existent needs with a brand that had the answer to their woes. It is all snake oil, really. There is no such thing, no panacea. I learned that in the hospital. I kept asking, isn't there a drug or something to reverse that? Their heads shook. No? Isn't there anything that can help with that? Help the healing process? Their heads shook. Just rest and rehab and my will. Just work and luck. As I crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, I dodged an older Ukrainian woman with a shawl and a steel utility cart filled with groceries. A bunch of kids walking along with their heads down on their phones, smoking stogies and taking drags off vape pens, and dozens of sightseers taking selfies. None of them were turning back. None of them were chastened by the storm. And I wasn't going to abandon my planned training over some weather. I needed to get in my daily 6-mile allotment. I owed it. I couldn't come up short. Everything depended on consistency, inerrancy, and discipline. I remembered laying in the hospital bed after waking up from the induced coma. I remembered rehab for the foot drop in my left foot that wouldn't flex due to the paralysis of the nerves, the damned peroneal nerve that I'd never heard of until it became my nemesis. For a while after the stroke, I couldn't see from my right peripheral and experienced a kind of pause in my thoughts during conversations, just lost my bearings and couldn't remember what was just said. In tests at the neurologist, I couldn't repeat a simple sentence, which made it hard to carry on a conversation. That is how it goes. One day, everything is normal, and then you get struck by lightning, or in my case, a Prius. Taking my bike out to buy groceries on a Tuesday night, I got sideswiped by a Prius and suffered head trauma that resulted in a stroke. The rain came forth in a downpour. The wind cracked like the lashes of a whip, and the cold exhalation of the river pulled the heat out of the autumn air. I felt the first warning droplets, sprinkles of mist, icy tendrils. Then they came harder, steadier, coating my forehead in a glaze of salty New York City rain, all acid and recycled Hudson River sludge. Truth be told, I alternated between the carrot and the stick. I'd count steps, give myself a little rah-rah stuff, and think of my after-run meal. But I'd be lying if I didn't own up to the fact that most of it was an evil drill sergeant saying, "Who are you kidding, you worthless loser? And your life is nothing. You are nothing. You're a fucking loser. Worthless. A piece of shit. Why do you even exist?" And worse, that is the voice, which has been more persistent since the stroke. And after the stroke, there were also occasional visions and hallucinations, usually malevolent ones, fears brought to life in the form of ghouls or ghosts, scarecrows or hobgoblins, just 80s B-movie stuff mostly. Nothing truly terrifying. A few moments later, the deluge crashed over my shoulders like shower water, running down my back, a furious gush of water, and the wind hit my face, buffeting me with unrelenting blows. And the wind slapped my back, muffling the street sounds and cocooning me in the isolating cone of rumbling storm sounds. It was isolating and unpleasant, the farthest thing possible from 70 degrees and sunny. When I finally came over to the Brooklyn side of the bridge and found some city ground shielded from the wind by buildings, with sufficient overhangs to shield me from the rain, the air was cold and crisp, perfect autumn air, redolent of carpets of crunchy brown leaves crunching underfoot on the sidewalks. But I was already soaked to the bone. I made my way down into Dumbo, sailing along by buildings with Merlot-covered bricks on their faces, watching you as you go, and cobblestone streets that give back sound as you clomp along, as if they are conversing with you and warning of the things hidden in alleyways and liminal spaces amid the cityscape. I headed under the Manhattan Bridge overpass by Adams Street to where people were enjoying the cool weather at wooden picnic tables and congregating to enjoy the autumn evening. They were all dry and had arrived before the storm rolled in. Happy with themselves, no doubt, for their attention to the weather report on their iPhones. Applauded I could not boast. I joined them and sat at a picnic table, drenched in cold rain. Steam coming off my face, my forehead, and my very breath. The rain was in my sweat-wicking t-shirt, in my Lululemon running sweatpants, and my water-resistant running shoes were squishing out water like a wrung sponge as I walked to the bench and sat down in a heap. A puddle of waterlogged defeat. An old Jamaican man directly across from me had a gray glass eye beneath drapes of dreadlocks. He was playing chess with a young black boy, school age, wearing a ball cap. There was a midget. He was a handsome fellow, square and black-haired with a side part, wearing a collared shirt and khakis, carrying himself with the deportment of a king. He was clean-faced, with a small mustache, giving just a hint of the rebel. I saw a red-haired woman in a green dress walking past. I saw a crow fly through the archway, down toward Pebble Beach. It was a surreal moment, separated out of time, and then, as I sat calmly, looking about, I heard a sound. It was a chirping whistle, a piping, a chattering screech. Chwee-a-pep-a, chwee, chwee. The sound came again, haunting, melodious, distressed. Chwee-a-pep-a, chwee, chwee, oop, chwee. Then on the heels of the sound was a mocking chortle. Oorp, qua, oorp, 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 qua. I looked about. I looked at the red-haired woman in the green dress who had sat down and was talking to a 7-foot-tall monster, a giant, who looked like an adult sitting at the tea table outside on the back lawn of a doll's house. They went on chit-chatting without a hint of disturbance. I looked at the Jamaican man with the dreadlocks and the glass eye. He moved his rook nonchalantly across the left-hand side of the board, capturing a threatening bishop with a satisfied smile. I could not see the little boy's reaction, but he was a gaunt boy, malnourished, with a Yankees ball cap. I looked at the midget, who was reading a book in the light of the golden hour, facing outward on the park bench he chose, oblivious to his surroundings. Did none of them hear it? Chwee-a-pepe, chwee, chwee. Then I looked up and identified the sound. The thing that made it. It was perched, inverted, clinging with claws like meat hooks that dug deeply into the concrete of the archway, holding the sinuous body in defiance of gravity. Its coat was a brilliant golden color that shimmered like fall leaves coated in nail polish and adorned with 1,000 tiny shimmering gemstones. It glistened with a slight pink hue. Its tail was a lion's tail, through and through, a happy, wagging tail that was at least 2 feet in length, with a big pom-pom on its end. It had a spiraling circular mane from neck to shoulder blade that transitioned from white feather to golden fur, capturing all the colors of the palette in between. And its wings, They hewed closely to the torso, the muscular lion's torso, draping the sides, a gold leaf texture reminiscent of the hammered, thin, unmistakable coating on bar ceilings from a bygone age that features the iconography of the architect's fancy in repeating patterns and frames the rooms in an unnatural glow. And the head. The head was the most haunting. An eagle's head. That regal head. The beak with flaring nostril holes, alternating in the light between bright canary yellow and deep amber. A thing of menace. And the eyes, big and raven-like, but sad. A killer's stare. Eyes that encompass the eddies of shame mixed in with the confident assurance of death itself. The black swirl of destiny that has come to pass. Chui-e-pepe, chui-chui. The thing sprinted along the archway to the ground like a circus motorcycle in a cage, seemingly immune to gravitational pull, its footfalls light and quick. Impossibly light and quick. And it was off toward Pebble Beach. I sprang to my feet and ran after it, running at a high tempo, not knowing why I was giving chase. At first, I could see it ahead of me on Adams Street, heading north toward Water Street, and I picked up the pace. It ran along the sidewalk beneath some scaffolding, and then leaped upside down, running along the underside of the scaffolding like a weightless mirage. I sprinted hard, and lactic acid was pooling in my legs. We bore left on the cobblestones of Water Street, and the creature was back on the ground, pulling away from me, leaping with long, fast strides over the cobblestones. My legs grew heavy and leaden. Just past Jacques Torres Chocolate, it grew so small in the distance that it became like a lonely speck of gold. Finally, the creature reached Pebble Beach and the great glass cube over Jane's carousel, and leaped again over the velvet stanchion ropes at the entrance and perched atop the carousel frame. I finally reached the attraction and ducked inside, leaning against the glass walls of the display to catch my breath. I watched as the creature circled around the top of the carousel. The carousel started up, and strains of old-fashioned music from the band organ floated over the river, mingling with the sound of crowds passing by. Da, dun, dun, da, dun, da, da, da. The 48 hand-carved wooden horses began to rise and fall as they circled Brooklyn Bridge Park. Chui-e-pep-e, chui-chui. The alien visage of this regal creature, with the head of a old eagle, vocalized its haunting call, and then regarded me, head motionless, at full height over its tucked-in and perched haunches, front legs straight, shoulders drawn back. It sat stationed on the far, ornamental exterior work beyond the moving mechanisms of the carousel, which spun beneath him, and it fixed its gaze and continued to regard me in eerie silence. Was this some apparition? A lengthy hallucination caused by my damaged neural veins? Or could this impossible vision be real? "You dare to chase after me?" it said, not in the voice of an ordinary man, but in a booming voice, like that of a great general. I thought it was a hallucination. "I had to see if you were real," I said. "This is no dream, boy. What stands before you has the strength of a lion and the wisdom of an eagle. I am the protector of great treasures. I test men's merits and search their hearts in hopes of finding, in any of you, the nobility and courage required," it said. Well, I guess I'd best be going back home. I was just finishing up a run. I wasn't looking for treasures or claiming nobility or anything like that, I said, beginning to walk toward the door. "Stop. Don't take another step. Are you telling me there's nothing your heart desires?" the creature asked. "Desires? Too numerous to mention. But right now, I just want my health back. A sliver of confidence, maybe," I said. "Humph. That isn't much. What would you use this health for? What would you do with your courage? Run in circles? Aim for a promotion? Settle down with a girl? Is there nothing more that drives you than a hamster wheel? Some money to throw at creature comforts? And settling down? No sense of adventure?" it asked. "Not for nothing, but making rent in Brooklyn and starting a family in this day and age is an adventure. Let me tell you," I said. "Enough, insolent little man. You see these horses on this carousel?" he asked. "I see them," I said. "Horses are the natural enemies of us griffins," the griffin said. "Why?" I asked. "Because horses are mindless servants that serve the will of the pure and the wicked alike. Lemmings, good-natured creatures, almost aristocratic in their complete humility and subservience, but to no end. Us griffin are creatures of purpose, and you, my friend, are giving horse vibes," the griffin said. "So, what is my purpose then?" I asked. "A better question would be, what is the purpose? But at least you are on the right track," the griffin said. "Okay, so what is that?" I asked. "I must be on my way now, but I will see you again," the griffin said. And it turned, and in a flash, the griffin jumped over my head, landed outside of the display, by Pebble Beach, and with long, fluid strides, like a leopard, dove onto the river and began churning across the water. Legs turning so quickly, it looked like the spinning wheels of a locomotive. The powerful wings opened, and it took flight, flapping those giant golden, shimmering wings as it soared out of sight. I continued my run back home, churning my legs, a fire in my abdomen, heaviness in my legs, a drowsy, delayed hitch in my left leg's footfalls. And as I reached Williamsburg and was almost home, I suddenly collapsed. A light was shining in my eyes as I came to. A red-haired woman in green medical scrubs was flashing a light to test my pupils. "Doctor, pupils constricting normally and dilating with the removal of the light," she said, looking down next to her. "Monitor the patient for the next half hour. Order up an EKG. And let me know of any unusual speech patterns observed," the man said. The doctor was a midget. He had a commanding presence despite his small stature. As he walked out of the room, the nurse did a few more tests and then turned back to me and said, "Rest up. You'll need your strength." A few minutes later, a giant man with a huge forehead entered. He had to be 7 feet tall. He said, "I am here to put some heparin and warfarin into the IV drip. It'll just take a minute." The man placed the screw-on syringe into an input tube and pushed the drugs into my IV drip. Then he flashed a friendly smile and was off. Finally, a Jamaican man with dreadlocks and one gray glass eye walked into my room and started writing on the whiteboard on the wall in front of me. "Roger," he wrote on the board. "I'm Roge, like Rogie, and I'll be taking care of you these next few days. Just press down on that dar button if you be needin' anything, and I'll be right in to sort you out. Okay?" I nodded at the man as he left, and scanning the room, I saw a little black boy in the bed next to me. He was asleep, and his head was covered with a Yankees baseball cap. He lay there completely still, in a coma, or maybe sleeping, just as gaunt and frail as they come. I had taken my EKG tests, had been wheeled around for some scans, and then brought back to my room. Exhausted, I'd passed out for a bit. After coming to from a short nap, I heard it again. Chui e pep e chui chui. Looking before me in the room, I saw the griffin. It was seated in the corner by the open window, letting in the cool October air. "What's your why?" the griffin said. "What?" I asked. "You want to get better, right?" the griffin asked. "Of course," I said. "You're going to need something a lot heavier than a Starbucks cappuccino and a croissant to put up with what this life's gonna throw at you. You're gonna need a lot more treasure to make the adventure worthwhile," the griffin said. "I don't know what that is," I said. "There will be time, my boy, to find it," the griffin said. "But are you even real?" I asked. "I am real, if you believe," the griffin said. "But what is a purpose to live for? Give me an example," I asked. "That is up to you," the griffin said. And with that, jumped through the window, calling back, "It's all up to you." And as he took flight, I felt a searing pain in my left shoulder. Chui e pep e chui chui. The exodus of the corporate zombies. I harbor a secret fantasy that the lot of us are undead zombies, shuffling corpses, slavish, insentient lumps of meat, navigating the public transportation system by reflex, devoid of any signs of higher-level cognitive function. I am waiting on a train platform to board the Long Island Railroad. The platform of Riverhead Station is indistinguishable from the platforms of any of the multitude of other trains run by the Metropolitan Transit Authority. The branching arteries all lead back to the beating heart. New York, New York. The Big Apple. The sunshine is what really gets me down. Those brief moments in the sun are the most depressing part of my day. Before I board my metal coffin and descend into the bowels of the subterranean tunnels that lead back to the source, boarding the train, we all nod to one another. There is Caitlin. She is wearing a sleek pantsuit, pale as an unbasted Christmas turkey. There is Vinny. He has quit smoking. He gnaws on a smoking cessation chew stick. Caitlin takes her usual seat, clicks open her laptop immediately, and responds to an email. It's 6:19 a.m., and I'm working, she says to her superiors. Vinny is a cell phone guy. He calls some labor union flunky and barks some pointless orders to let the men know he's awake and he's watching. There's Brandon. He is a Wall Street Journal guy, a reader. He opens that paper wide. In the seat next to me, his elbows brush my shoulder, and that infernal paper smells like paper mâche and peat moss, pulpy ammonia, and sulfite. Smells like hell. I get off at Grand Central Terminal Madison and exit through the bowels of the city. Bodies flow out of the trains when the doors open, like the gates of navigation dams, allowing water to flow down through canals to the next elevation. The corpus of the flowing bodies splits at little tributaries, some leading to the surface, where I am headed, others lower, deeper into the subterranean dungeon. I walk north from 47th Street to 53rd Street on Lexington Avenue. I blend in and amid a stopping and starting throng of mindless streetwalkers that navigate communally like a school of fish or a flock of birds. We split at a street crossing with an Uber that didn't make the turn and is blocking pedestrian traffic, blocking the box. Then we swerve en masse around a homeless man sleeping on a cardboard box in the middle of the sidewalk, with a hat by his feet and a sign saying, "Homeless, humiliated veteran, please help." We do all of this mindlessly in comatose prisons, our unremitting corpses dragging us along. Our thoughts are closed off by the virus in a faraway chamber, unreachable and fortified. No one speaks to one another. We walk in silence, heads lowered, zombified bodies still donning the starched and pressed suits of the living. Pallid faces are directed away from the searing sunshine. We are still draped in living, breathing skin that gives the appearance of life. I arrive at my building. I walk through the gray-streaked white marble lobby with a matching gray-streaked white marble reception desk, flash my badge, and place it on the turnstile into the building. I take the elevator down to the basement level. I stare blankly ahead, with the feeling that the whole world is asleep. I walk into the dingy maintenance office suite, a shut-up room with pumped-in air, and I am back in another subterranean dungeon, away from the things of man. "Hey, duct tape," Greg says, nodding. Greg has thick-framed, high-prescription glasses and an unassuming brown suit. He is a heavily balding, 40-something, Clark Kent-looking guy with paler skin and a bit of a gut. "Hi, Sam," Gina says with a smile. She is about 30 and single, and wearing a floral blouse over a casual jean skirt, clear leggings, and pumps. Gina has flowing black hair and dark eyebrows. She has a little rouge on her face and dark carmine lipstick. Gina smells like fresh laundry, with a spritz of lily flowers, waxy, light, and verdant. I can taste her on my tongue like a fruity Jolly Rancher candy. Back when I was still living, I crushed on her hard. "Morning," I say. The placard on my desk reads, "Facilities Maintenance Specialist." I report to the Facilities Operations Manager, Jeremy. It is quite possibly the most useless job of all time. I can hear Mike Rowe's voice on a useless jobs special describing the stupidity of this position in vivid detail. Jeremy also sits in the same room as Greg, Gina, and I. Because why not house multiple levels of redundant management, literally right on top of one another? That isn't a rhetorical question. It is a statement I made once that cost me another job. Jeremy is on a Zoom call about a pesky HVAC issue with the 40-ton AC unit and chiller. This seems to confirm my suspicion that we are undead creatures, with ventilation just as stagnant as that offered to Subway. Rats. Jeremy is a dusty, square man who moves in a choppy claymation manner, like a character in a Gumby cartoon. "Yeah, but the water loop." "Right, Larry. How do we make sure it reaches the lower floors?" "I didn't ask you that, Larry." "So, it's the chiller?" "Right, Larry. The chiller, then?" "I didn't ask you that, Larry." "And Bob, how many men will it take? What is it gonna cost us? Put in the requisition." "Larry, we need to get his going, Larry. This isn't gonna be a problem now, is it, Larry?" Today, we both approach the same old-fashioned coffee pot at the same time. The one with the burnt-in brown crust on the bottom from warming stale coffee too long without the burner being turned off. These have gone out of style, but are still seen these days in the waiting area of every dingy car mechanic's shop. I wait for Jeremy to get his cup and then fix mine. I add in the processed Coffee Mate fake creamer and add some stevia fake sweetener to taste. staring down at the putrid brown coffee in the styrofoam cup under the unnatural overhead lights in the subterranean room, full of pumped-in air, with the coffee mate clumping up into little floaters as I stir. I am certain that no living creature would take part in such a deadening ritual. The coffee tastes like arsenic. The overhead lights penetrate my skull and char my brain, which caramelizes into brown residue, like the stain on the bottom of the coffee pot. The stilted silence is intermittently interrupted by phones ringing on the floor. It reminds me of the secure unit of a nearby Bellevue sanitarium, in which invisible orderlies stand ready with concealed blackjacks and expandable riot sticks in their coats, all for the too frequently needed crisis intervention. My job is to maintain the look and feel of the facilities and ensure a comfortable and high-quality environment. I have no knowledge of plumbing, electrical, or carpentry, but I decide when specialists in these areas are needed to fix a problem. I have no knowledge of snow removal, office cleaning, on-site and off-site data storage, supply reorder processing, or furniture and decor, but I specialize in assisting the operations manager with managing all of these tasks. At 4:11 p.m., the role of facilities suddenly becomes temporarily obsolete. The fluorescent lights overhead unceremoniously flicker, hiss angrily, and go dark. So do the computer screens, the phones, everything. The elevators are stuck mid-floor. Trains in subway tunnels slow to an abrupt and jarring stop. It is as if a blood clot has become lodged in the left main artery, cutting off blood flow to the heart. The pulsing beat of the metropolis slows. Do-dump, 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 and then stops. Do. I walk all the way up to the 22nd floor. As I climb the stairs, the sweat coats my chest underneath my white button-down shirt, which begins to seep through. I finally come to the floor where our cohorts in purchasing sit. A little color returns to my face from the climb. There is an old-fashioned table radio on the darkened conference table, streaming out news from 1010 Winds AM radio. Walking in, I scream out, "Bill, Bill, you there, Bill?" "Sam?" he asks. "Bill, what's going on here?" I say. "Blackout, Sammy boy. The whole East Coast is down, and part of Canada," Bill says. "What the hell caused it?" I ask. "They are saying some trees in Ohio brushed against a high power line and overloaded the system," Bill says. "How'd you like that? A strong gust of wind and some tree branches have sent us back to the Stone Age. So, it's a vegetation management issue. Human error," I say, walking out into the hallway. I can hear the screams of a woman trapped in an elevator in between floors. She is screaming for help. I take off my shoe and use it to pry open the closed elevator doors. peering in. I cannot see anything but the black interior of the car from above, where there is a small opening down into the car. "Help! Help!" she screams. "Are you okay?" I ask. "Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Please get me out of here," she says. "What's your name?" I ask. "I'm Michelle," she says. "And where do you work?" I ask. "On the 59th floor," she says. "Okay. We are going to get this sorted out. Get you out of here. I'll stay and talk to you for a few minutes until someone comes. Why don't you tell me what is going on with you? I'm so scared. I want to check in on my daughter, but I don't know what is going on," Michelle says. "I don't know either. The lights, the electricity, it all just died," I tell her. "Someone said it is a power grid failure. Some trees downed a high power line, and it overloaded the system. My God," she says. "It is so dark in here. And I think of how dark the bleached corridors and office suites are, but in a different way. A firefighter comes running up the staircase I just exited from. He stands at attention, like a superhero in a comic book, larger than life, totally calm, in command, assured. He must be one of the last of the living. Someone's here, a fireman, I say. Even though it is summer, he is wearing the traditional tan top coat with reflective taping, the fire hat, and is holding a crowbar and a hatchet in his enormous left hand. He is a big fellow of at least 6'4", strapping. He pushes me to the side, reaches into the elevator, clasps the woman's arm, and pulls her out in one yanking pull. She scuffles her feet as she finds footing on solid ground. I give Michelle a hug. She cries on my shoulder and says, "My darling Rebecca, I don't know how to find her. People are walking home, walking the streets," I say. "Just walk with them. I'm sure she's doing the same." I head back down the stairs to the maintenance room. Arriving in the maintenance room, I see Gina chewing on the end of her pen and tapping her left foot nervously. Her eyes are wide and inviting, and I feel a thumping in my chest. Can't be, I think. A sign of life? "Where have you been?" she asks. "I went up to purchasing to see if anyone knew anything," I say. "And fucking left me down here with Greg?" she asks. "I'm sorry. I needed to check things out," I tell her. "What do we do now?" she asks. "I can't get back to Riverhead tonight. If you want, I can come and stay with you. Walk back, keep you company." My heart is echoing in my chest. I can feel the warm blood in my ears. It is almost as if I am a living creature, still endowed with a life force and a will of my own. "You'd do that?" she asks. "Would I do that?" I think. "Are you kidding?" Of course I'd do that, in a heartbeat, without question. But I don't want her to know how keen I am on the idea. "Sure, I've got to sleep somewhere," I say as casually as I can manage. Gina and I walk down Lexington Avenue in silence at first, taking in the sights and sounds of this once-in-a-lifetime moment. The daywalkers are shuffling along in abject confusion. The dislocated bodies rattle, bone on bone. The breathless friction of the arthritic joints, gritting from lack of use. They all look blankly forward at the footfalls of the other daywalkers, a bawdry display of sudden clemency. Inmates freed from captivity, grumbling at the loss of their comfortable bondage, their predictable harlotry, and now they are cast asunder into a concrete desert, wandering, listless and free. But free to do what? And free to go where? Some of the more recently dead voice words of encouragement. We're gonna make it out of here, all of us, together. We're New Yorkers. Some others ask, where shall we go? And yet others speculate. There will be shelters set up when we get back out of Manhattan. The strange thing, the thing I can't wrap my head around, is that everyone, by some internal navigation system, automatically is fleeing the city, the beating heart of the metropolis. No one wants to stay in Manhattan overnight, not even the ones that live here. Does anyone live here? Is it even a real place? It seems now to be a work camp, a prison to be escaped, a liminal space that can't be lived in. An Alcatraz made of bricks and mortar and steel and marble. The parade of the undead proceeds forward with unexpected charity and unity, even if it is lacking entirely in life. The bodega clerks are out in the streets, handing out Poland spring waters and plates of food that will spoil. There are police at intersections, directing traffic, furiously screaming and waving their hands to stop cars from crashing without traffic signals. There are buses taking folks out to Long Island. The blazing late afternoon sun burns with a surreal intensity. A full day of baking turns the pavement hot and causes waves of heat to radiate up from the road base. The buildings sit like impotent ruins of a bygone age, dark and useless relics. And for the life of me, I can't understand their use or purpose, which suddenly seems so strange. That all these people would travel from places too far to reach on foot. Travel for hours each day. For what? To assemble in these ghastly concrete prisons like inmates? To have their lives consumed by a machine of consumerism that eats its own young? For what? As we get into Murray Hill, we turn left on 32nd Street, everyone going the same way. We are all headed to Brooklyn. What an adventure, Gina says. And I remember that time I took her to Mets Stadium because I had extra tickets to a Dave Matthews show. I remember how she hit my arm when the opening band was playing. It had been August then, too. we'd hit each other with playful jabs like school children, back and forth, all night. We'd gotten really carried away with it, so much so that we both had armfuls of bruises the next day. The tension of what we both really wanted to do had been palpable, but neither of us had the courage to act on it. We turn again at Kips Bay, overlooking the FDR, and head south toward the Brooklyn Bridge. "Where do you live in Brooklyn?" I ask. "Oh, just down in the Heights, near the courthouse, over on Remsen Street," she says. We continue walking as the crowd of the undead thickens into a veritable street mob, clogging 2nd Avenue, so tight with people we are fit to bursting. I put my arm on Gina's shoulder and hold her close, keeping her next to me. "That feels nice," she says. "I don't want to lose you in this mess," I say. In time, we come to the Brooklyn Bridge. It is a crazy spectacle. The bridge is swaying from the foot traffic. It is jammed from one side to the other, with people crossing on foot. There are helicopters overhead, filming the exodus. The mood has changed, and some of the daywalkers are shaking off their heavy, hebetudinous slumber and waking as if from a dream. Their faces are full of smiles and laughter. I haven't seen such wide-eyed impetuosity outside of a music festival. It is like the Dave Matthews concert I'd went to with Gina. They all seem happy, hopeful, alive. As we arrive at Gina's 7th floor walk-up, a dingy place, she smiles and gives me an impromptu kiss on the cheek. She grabs a bottle of Meiomi Pinot Noir and 2 plastic cups, and we head outside where it is cooler. Out in the streets, it is like a festival. We are in a magical realm. People are dancing and singing. Buskers are playing. People are singing along. This is how the city was meant to be. We walk down to O'Keefe's, and we sit down outside and neck like kids in high school. "Hey, Sam," she says. "Yes, Gina," I say. "Don't leave me," she says. I smile, and at that moment, I know that I am never returning to that office building again. My undead body finally shakes off the curse. Do I remember how to live? Resurgence to suggestion of domestic violence, general violence, and child abuse may cause offense. In the darkness of oblivion, now and as forever, swaths and waves of misery wash over me, disembodied, immutable and adrift. I should be at peace after all of this time on my own. But the sounds of suffering and pain continue to assault me, as they have done since I was delivered from one prison to another, tethered by the constraints of many others. Breathless, urgent cries like the bleating of sheep being slaughtered, high-pitched, keening wails like those of the wind as it peels itself apart, traversing caverns, tortured, lingering mewls like that of rolling thunder, spidering across the land as it creeps closer, wolf-like howls, ass-like brays, child-like screams, incessant, never-ending, compounding, tormented peals of agony that consume all opposing sounds, of laughter and happiness, exaltation and joy, sounds more pleasing to my phantom ears that I have lost the ability to focus on as I endure relentless grief, alone in the dark forever, and I cannot take it anymore. Floating in this murky abyss, weightless, shapeless, my essence comprised of thought and thought alone, a suffocating river of suppressive shadows drags me on, carrying me through the bottomless mire like a tumbling avalanche of tar as I drop my defenses and commit to the cries of the dying, cries that break like waves crashing down on me from every direction, threatening to drag me under and smother me in swells of black bile, like the desperate wails of a girl bawling in terror as an angered, drunken male calls her a waste, a drain, a worthless piece of shit like her mother, the grief-stricken sobs of a boy, begging for forgiveness as a female voice of authority, dripping with sadistic glee, tells him he's a sinner and must pay. The heart-rending shrieks of a woman, each one accompanied by a bellow of rage and a slap, thud, crack, whump, bang, the weakened pleas of a male, begging for release from the suffering he has been kept in for, as his feeble voice suggests. Many more days than he should have endured. The shrieks, the gasps, the whimpers, the whines, the moans, and the shouts. In various tones and languages, from all manner of people, male and female, young and old, near and far, all victims, all suffering, all being hurt to sate others' dark desires and insecurities, just as I was. And I cannot stand it anymore. Something, one of those screams, one of those anguished choruses of pain, acts as a trigger, a catalyst, the very last heartbreak I can bear. And for the first time in aeons, I move, or at least I think of moving, for I do not have a form I can manipulate, not in this realm, not on this plane of existence. So I do what I can in this collection of thoughts being dragged through the rapids like soul silt, and imagine my consciousness rising, memories of arms and legs powering it up and onwards through the murk and the dark and the thick, churning sludge, the fast-flowing essence of nothing, up, through, out. I need to escape this torrent of torment, the one I've endured for so long. Ignoring it no longer works. Accepting it does not stave off nightmares. Pretending it isn't there serves no purpose. Not after all this time. Not when misery thrives, extends its field of influence, and grows stronger, spreading its cancer-like tendrils through every blessed part of creation, consuming and destroying all in its wake. I can offer a deaf ear no more. I must return. I must fight back. I must awake. And so, my spirit rises, fighting against the current that has held me like a prison for so long. A prison within a prison, within multiple prisons. And I feel them all around me all at once, encasing me, holding me frozen in various guises. But prisons can be escaped. Cells can be made homes. Inmates can become wardens, and a world overrun by monsters needs a watchman. My thoughts of breaking free intensify. My visions of escaping this disabling psychic swamp take on more clarity. My imagination strengthens, and soon I can sense, feel, see the way out. The crusty underside to the surface of this chundering mass. My invisible arms reaching towards it. My non-existent fingers digging in, crumbling it like ash, and plunging through, slowing the flow of my conscience through raging waters of black noise. Imagined fingers, hands, and arms push through and out of the abyss, of the darkness, of the afterflow. And then, as I visualize a head and shoulders I haven't possessed in an eternity, breaking the surface, my multitude of prisons close around me, as my spirit flows into them, and I stiffen, I take shape, I assume form and size and weight. I feel and hear everything with more urgency and emotion than before, and then, slowly, painfully, as I strain to force vision into unseeing eyes crafted by others, dozens at first, then hundreds, I start to see, for the first time in so long, and my mind is assaulted by colors and shapes and sights of things I could never imagine and cannot at once comprehend. A world far removed from the one I remember. Unrecognizable, claustrophobic, insane. But that is not the worst part of this place. These places, these alien, inexplicable environments I find myself in, having slipped free of the all-consuming death flow. No, the worst part is the closer proximity to the soul-crushing sounds that engulf me in all my myriad of forms. The sources of these sounds draw my attention away from the confusion of all else. For as much as my surroundings may have altered with the passage of time, what has not changed, what can not change, is the vile, indisputable hatred and evil of man, bubbling up from the depths of the weakest of vessels, manifesting on the surface as depraved, abhorrent, hate-filled ignorance and scorn, to visit savagery on innocent victims. Victims I am now able to see, like the child cowering in the corner of a room, tears streaming down her face as a man, a parent, rants and raves and bangs fat fists on a table a chipped wooden slab overladen with shiny metallic cylinders, some upright, others on their sides, others still twisted or crushed, like the woman, her clothing torn, her lip bloody, dark streaks running from eyes to chin, arms up to defend herself as a well-dressed male with a sneer on his lips and a glint in his eye swings a smooth, polished stick in her direction, laughing, taunting, telling her she's upset him for the last time, like the pimple-faced, heavy-set boy, sitting in the center of a room filled with tables and chairs, crying as one his own age stalks around him, laughing and spitting, kicking and punching his head like the nude male strapped to a wheeled bed, begging for his life in a concrete chamber illuminated by clacking, flickering light tubes, while a silent, masked individual stands by a table, selecting a serrated edge blade from a collection of knives, like the screaming baby in the cot, whose cries fall silent as a bleary-eyed woman drops a cushion, like the grime-covered girl chained to a wall, shrieking as her prison door opens and her captor shines a torch into her eyes, like the fear-stricken boy in the corner of a toy-filled room decorated with paintings of happy-looking characters in bright costumes, quivering and shaking as a wild-eyed banshee yells insults and curses and stomps like fear, pain, suffering in every location where my eyes have started to see, because these are the places I've been drawn to. These are the scenes that have called me, awakened me from my slumber, forced my hand, and begged me to return, to do something, to help these lost souls. And so I have, and so I will. But to do so, I need more than vision. To do so, I must be able to move. I need arms and legs I am unfamiliar with and have never used before to function. I need to remember how my own arms and legs worked when I had them, how I bent the knees and rotated the elbows, how I clenched my hands and flexed my fingers, how I stood on 2 feet and maintained balance. It's been so long since I had physical form in this plane of existence, and the memories return to me slowly. But return they do, as I force sensation into new limbs attached to bodies of various shapes and sizes, in places where various people suffer. I switch my attention from place to place, letting the differing scenarios wash over me, tuning out the noise and the colors, focusing on the one thing that is constant, the relentless, insurmountable pain. And as it continues to mount, as screams and cries intensify, as people hurt and struggle before my newly unblinded eyes, I start to move, starting with fingers and toes. It is not easy. The digits offer resistance. They are stiff and cold, solid, frozen in rigor, carved or sculpted or molded. I do not know what constitutes the majority of the bodies I find myself in, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is that I take control and make them work, so I can put a stop to the depravities being inflicted by the harbingers of evil I see before me, below me, above me, around me. In every blessed place, my vision clears, cracks, screeches, creaks. Soft sounds, transformative sounds, inaudible over the desperate cries of the distressed, obvious only to my ears, which I now realize are hearing directly in each of the spaces I inhabit, and not coming at me through the inky black ether of the void. I am present now in hundreds, not dozens, of locations, and each one of them, regardless of their decor or state of repair, presents to me the sights and sounds of despair. I cannot look away. I cannot unhear. I cannot move, despite my fingers and toes now wiggling. I am secured, pinned down in a fashion I am intimately familiar with, in a position I have let myself be kept in for far too long. Move, I think. And now my arms and legs are twitching, twisting, pulling at the bonds that hold them, tearing at adhesives, loosening wires, tugging at bolts and nails, second by second, fraction by fraction, bit by bit, freeing hands and feet that have never been free before. And not only that, I have sensation throughout my bodies, stomachs, chests, backs, heads, and I feel everything, all the stiffness and petrification, and I remember everything, all the wounds and pain, and I relive everything, all the indignities and humiliation, and I anger and intensify my efforts, bucking and jerking and wrenching my forms until they fall or drop or slide from where they rest, where they've waited, unmoving, for so long. No more. My feet, at least, in many locations are free, or loose enough to set free with a little more effort. Effort I exert unconsciously, driven by desire to stop the violence being perpetrated before me. As freedom finds me, I get feet of various sizes underneath me and push myself up, ignoring the differing weights of my multitude of bodies and the burdens they carry, rising up in a dirty kitchen where a small child cries as blows are delivered by a father, in a flower-filled bedchamber where a battered female endures humiliating abuse, in a concrete basement where an unspeakable monster drives a knife into the side of a naked captive, in a tiled washroom where a crying male cowers, while a woman screams and shouts and swings a hammer. In shed, where a girl is dragged to the ground by a laughing male. In a chapel, in a schoolhouse, in a barn. Everywhere I awake, where there is suffering, and I advance. Slowly, stiffly, on near rigid legs that fight my attempts to make them move. They do not operate like the ones I remember, nor do my arms, which is of benefit, as their rigidness makes it easier for me to wrench them away from what holds them, which I do as I stumble forward, pulling them loose, allowing the restraints to clatter, thud, clang to assorted floors, setting me free, and more than that, providing me with arms. The objects I find behind me when I turn are mostly heavy, some with sharp edges, some blunt, made of metal or wood or substances with which I am not familiar. It doesn't matter. My hands have been released. My arms have been liberated. And as the screaming and crying and tearful, breathless howling rattles on, I take a moment to master control of my upper limbs, to flex them and bend them and maneuver, to lift the cargo I've unloaded into my hands. Everywhere I now exist with agency. Everywhere I now have the means by which to end hateful, needless suffering and punish the wicked with judgment and divine retribution, weapons in hand, bodies softened, arms and legs moving freely in response to my thoughts. I focus on the evil and make myself charge forward in hundreds of places, thousands of places, rooms and chambers and enclosures in locations all over this God-forsaken world. One I thought I'd left behind forever. I charge. I run. I attack. Unnatural power from the afterflow filling my army of one, launching me into the air at the darkness, fueled monsters that visit death and destruction on their fellow man. Some of them turn, alerted to my presence by sound or flicker of movement, surprise in their eyes as they see what is coming, confusion as they try to comprehend, horror as they grasp the true meaning, while I soar through the air toward their throats. Some even splutter my name, and it is interesting to note they remember me. Others remain ignorant and oblivious till the end, too enthralled by their wickedness and the horrible acts they are committing to notice me jump onto their backs, clamber up to their shoulders, take position there while brandishing miniature crosses like holy swords, long forgotten power surging through them, long unused miracle filling them up. And then I put a stop to it all. The torment, the unholy, the fear, the pain and the suffering, the eternal, agonizing screams. I put an end to it all by driving my sanctified tools of cleansing into the jugulars of those committing these atrocities, and I suck out their malignant souls, imprisoning them within the symbolic means of my persecution, the recreations of the cross upon which I myself was tortured, the prison on which I suffered and died. Now my means to grant mercy to the masses and punish the evil that has consumed the world. And as my army of effigies, the countless numbers of cells that house my splintered soul, fall from backs and shoulders, as monsters expire while I drop to a multitude of floors, their contaminated, pain-inflicting bodies drained of evil. I watch gratitude and hope, wonder and amazement flood the tear-filled eyes of the lambs I have saved from their slaughter, forcing man-made lips of bronze, wood, silver, and more to crack apart and curl into a smile. I've been gone, but I've returned, and I won't revisit oblivion until the world I was once sent to teach has at last found peace. The shadow, the night, was silent, draped in an inky darkness that swallowed the world outside the small security room. I sat alone, surrounded by an array of flickering screens that illuminated my face in a ghastly blue glow. The hum of the surveillance equipment was the only sound in the room, its monotony broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling or the distant wail of a siren. I was the lone sentinel, tasked with safeguarding the premises during the bewitching hours of the night shift. Hours had passed since I settled into my chair, my eyes diligently scanning the labyrinthine halls and desolate rooms of the building. Everything appeared as it should, empty, lifeless, and eerily quiet. But as the clock ticked deeper into the night, a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach. The air seemed charged with a palpable tension, as if something sinister lurked just beyond the reach of the camera lenses. I leaned forward, adjusting my seat and peering closer at one of the monitors. In the dim light, the corridor appeared to stretch endlessly, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long, ominous shadows on the walls. As my eyes darted across the screen, I saw a movement, a mere blur at the edge of the frame. My breath caught in my throat, and I focused on the camera, my heart pounding. There, in the grainy black and white footage, was a figure. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by shadows. The figure moved slowly, almost purposefully, down the hallway, its gait uneven and unsettling. I squinted, trying to make out any distinguishing features, but the face remained hidden. Shrouded in darkness, a shiver crept up my spine as I grabbed the radio at my side. Central, this is security. I've got a visual on an unidentified person in Corridor C. I need backup. Static crackled before a voice responded, thick with sleep. Copy that. We're sending someone your way. Stay on the line. I nodded, my eyes never leaving the screen. The figure continued its eerie saunter, disappearing momentarily from one camera's view, only to reappear on another. It seemed to be toying with me, always staying just out of clear sight. A phantom in the night. Minutes dragged on like hours as I awaited the arrival of my colleagues. The figure persisted in its haunting stroll, growing closer to the main entrance with every passing moment. I gripped the edges of the desk, my knuckles turning white, and watched in dread as it reached the lobby. As if sensing my gaze, the figure turned its head toward the camera, and I gasped. Its eyes, 2 points of cold, blue light, glowed in the darkness, fixated on the lens, as if it could see me. I recoiled, my heart pounding so loudly that I could hear it in my ears. "Central, it's looking at the camera," I stammered into the radio. "I need someone here now." The response was a garbled mess of static and fragmented words. Desperation clawed at me as I watched the figure approach the security room. It moved with an unnatural grace, its movements silent and deliberate. My fingers fumbled for the door lock, and I managed to secure it just as the figure reached the hallway outside. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room, and I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow and rapid. I could hear its footsteps now, soft but deliberate, as it approached the door. Each step sent a chill down my spine, and I prayed that the lock would hold. The figure stopped just outside the door, and I held my breath, willing myself to be invisible. Through the frosted glass window, I saw its silhouette, tall and imposing. Its hand reached out, fingers curling around the doorknob. I bit down hard on my lip to stifle a scream. My entire body tensed, ready to bolt at a moment's notice. Seconds stretched into an eternity before the figure withdrew its hand, and I heard its footsteps fading away down the corridor. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The building seemed to groan and sigh around me, the very walls whispering secrets that I couldn't comprehend. Summoning my courage, I cautiously unlocked the door and peeked into the hallway. It was empty, devoid of any signs of the figure. I hesitated for a moment before venturing out, my flashlight casting shaky beams of light across the walls. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and I could feel unseen eyes watching my every move. I retraced the figure's steps, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Each flickering light and distant sound sent my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that the figure was still there, just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I finally reached the lobby, my eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. The room was still, the silence broken only by the distant wail of sirens. I let out a shaky breath, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. Whatever had been in the building with me was gone, but its presence lingered, a haunting memory etched into the very walls. I made my way back to the security room, my steps quickening with each passing moment. As I entered, I glanced at the monitors, half expecting to see the figure staring back at me. But the screens were empty, showing only the empty halls and deserted rooms. I sank into my chair, my hands trembling as I reached for the radio. "Central, this is security. I think it's gone. I don't know what it was, but it's gone now." The response was a crackle of static. And then a voice came through, tinged with concern. "Are you all right? Do you need medical assistance?" I hesitated for a moment before shaking my head, even though I felt far from all right. "No, I'm fine. Just shaken up. I'll be okay." The sun began to rise, casting a faint light through the windows and dispelling the darkness that had settled over the building. My relief was palpable, but the memory of that night would forever haunt my dreams. I had come face to face with something beyond explanation, something that defied logic and reason. As the day shift arrived to relieve me, I gathered my belongings and made my way to the exit. The building, once familiar and comforting, now felt alien and menacing. I stepped out into the daylight, the warmth of the sun, a stark contrast to the cold grip of fear that still clung to me. I glanced back at the building one last time, my eyes drawn to the security room window. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement inside, a shadowy figure standing amidst the monitors. But it was gone in an instant, leaving me to wonder if it had ever been there at all. I walked away, my footsteps quickening with every step. The world around me seemed to blur, the events of the night replaying in my mind like a nightmare. I didn't know what I had encountered, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. Some things, it seemed, were better left in the darkness, where they belonged. Subconscious convictions. They say in the moment of tragedy, time slows down. During those precious seconds, the mind accelerates. Your surroundings are a blur and disappear as your attention turns inward. You consider the events that led you to this point and what you could or should have done different. You consider who this will affect. You're suddenly acutely aware of every regret you have, things you wish you had done, or words you wish you had said to people you may never see again. What they don't tell you is that during this time of reflection, those thoughts don't matter. The steps that led you to this point have already been taken. You cannot change the past, and now must deal with whatever comes as a consequence of your own actions. But what if those thoughts did matter? I'm going to lose my job. That was the first thought that raced through my mind as I watched the man pull a gun from beneath his baggy jacket. The same man I had passed through security only minutes before. This was my first day on the job, and I was already going to lose it. The years I spent in college, scrounging for food and borrowing my friends' couches and car seats just to have a place to sleep. The loans I took from friends, family, and disreputable sources. None of that mattered anymore, as the fruit of my hard-earned labor was going to sour and rot on the very first day. The moment the glint of his pistol caught my attention, my hand was already reflexively reaching for my own holster. In the mere moment it took to draw my gun and form the words on my tongue for the man to drop his weapon, I was presented with a choice. Do I fire at the man whose own gun is pointed at the young woman behind the desk? Or do I wait and try to talk him down? If I hesitate, he could kill the woman before I fire. Or I could fire first, not giving him the chance to stand down. What if the gun was fake, and this was just an attempt at intimidation? Does this scenario meet the requirements for the rules of engagement? With my decision made, I shout for the man to put down the gun. Before the last word had fled from my mouth, an explosive sound that will, from that moment on, forever haunt my waking moments rings out. I made the wrong judgment. The man pulled the trigger. Time continues to crawl by as the young woman's body drops to the ground, red misting the air and painting the wall behind her as she crumples out of sight behind the desk. Seemingly to compensate for its slowed pace, time then speeds up. People scream and drop to the ground. A mother flings herself over her child. An elderly man clutches his chest and faints. I have little recollection of what follows. I'm sure police arrive and subdue the man, as I suddenly find myself sitting outside on the curb. Uniformed officers question me. I'm not sure what answers I give them. All I can do is stare at their holstered guns. 3 seconds. That was all the time it took for the man to pull his weapon and end a life. Those 3 seconds play on repeat over and over. I lose my job due to my own negligence. If I had followed proper procedure, I would have found the man's gun as he came through security. Out a job, and with a permanent black mark on my record, my degree and certifications become nothing more than useless pieces of paper. My brand new car I financed is repossessed. I return to couch surfing and lending in order to get through each day. Loud sounds now terrify me. The bang of a car door closing has me reflexively reaching for a sidearm that isn't there, only for nausea to rise at the mere thought of a weapon. Red mist and a body crumbling to the ground. It only took 3 seconds for that man to pull his pistol and kill. I can no longer make decisions for myself. I fear that whatever choice I make will be the wrong one, somehow causing another life to end. Second-guessing every move I make completely overwhelms my day-to-day actions. I cannot help but spiral within my own tortured thoughts to the point where I am too terrified to even move. It only took 3 seconds. The instant the man pulled the gun from his jacket, instinct led me to grab my son, push him to the tile floor, and cover his small body with my own. The only thought racing through my mind was his protection. Having only recently lost his father, I couldn't fathom losing Evan as well. A spray of red, the body of a young woman falling to the floor, the thud of her body colliding with tile echoing in my head. What if that had been Evan? What if he were older and the one working behind the desk when someone decided that they would end his life? Who would have protected him if I wasn't here? The security guard by the door, frozen with his gun raised, solidifies my resolve that no one can protect Evan like I can. It takes 3 police officers to pry me from my son's protection. Only after several reassurances that the gunman has been subdued and that we are safe am I willing to detach myself from Evan. Sweeping my sobbing 4-year-old into my arms, I hold him close as I provide the police with my statement, receive the okay from medical personnel to leave, and speed the safety of our small home. That could have been Evan standing behind the counter. No one can protect him like I can. With school shootings, a very real possibility. I pull Evan out of school just in case. I find a new job and that will allow me to work from home while homeschooling at the same time. Groceries are delivered to the house. Contact-free, of course. The only times I find myself not being able to avoid leaving the safety of our home are for regular visits to the doctor's office. I put these off for as long as I can without risking Evan's health. Every individual we pass is a threat, as who knows what weapons they carry, hidden beneath their clothing. Who knows what intentions they may have, or when they might decide to take their frustrations out on my innocent child. A local news broadcast covers the story of an injured criminal waking during surgery and attacking the caretakers and 2 bystanders. What if Evan and I had been there for an appointment? Even the hospitals weren't safe anymore. I called and canceled Evan's upcoming checkup. The doctor's office called at least once a day for a week straight to reschedule Evan's appointment. I let every call ring to voicemail. I know what is best for Evan. No one can protect him like I can. The phone calls eventually stop. The following week, 2 police officers arrive at our house, claiming the hospital staff called, asking for them to ensure we were okay. I reiterate through the closed door that all is well, but I refuse to open my home to them. I can see from the window the weapons they carry. What if they are not really police officers? What if they are here to hurt Evan? The next day, the police return with a woman dressed in a pantsuit and claiming to be from Child Protective Services. I refuse them entry and tell Evan to hide in his room. The woman claims that she is worried for my son's well-being and begs me to open the door. She doesn't have to worry about Evan. That is my job. Only I can protect him. They took Evan from me. They came in force, showing me documents that mean nothing to me as I sit handcuffed on my own couch. They claim I am not mentally fit to take care of my own son, as if they know anything about me or the dangers the outside world presents to my innocent child. I try to get them to understand that he needs me, that only I can protect him. Why can't they understand? They tell me I can argue my case in court. Why does no one understand? How can no one see how dangerous the world is? It only takes one man with a gun deciding to end a life. No one can protect Evan like I can. The customer service smile I have plastered on my face falls away as the man across the desk from me reaches beneath his jacket and pulls free a pistol. Despite the situation, I find myself surprised by the condition of the gun. My father was an avid weapon collector, and, as his only child, I was subjected to hours of instruction on all topics involving firearms. The man's gun isn't anything special, and is a brand that most households have stashed away somewhere for home defense. What caught my attention was the poor condition of the weapon. Scuffs and scratches cover most of the surface, and bare metal glints through gouged paint and texture. Wherever this man had obtained the gun from, there was a good chance it was either stolen or sold illegally. By the time the last remnants of my smile disappear, and my quick analysis of the man's pistol ends, I realize too late that I am the target of his aggression. Raised by a gun enthusiast, I thought I had seen them from every angle. I realized then that never have I stared down the barrel of one. It was a sight immediately burned into my mind, and one I never wanted to see again. I watch in slow motion as the muscles just under the skin of the man's hands tense, and his finger begin to pull the trigger. I can't help but think with irony that I won't have to worry about living with that fear. Silence follows the explosion of a firing pistol. The scene before me is familiar, though I can't determine why or how. I stand before a young woman, a waist-high desk, the only barrier between us. My right hand grips the cold, unfamiliar metal of the pistol I purchased from a stranger earlier this morning. I stare down the top of the gun at the young woman. She seems more interested in the details of the gun rather than the fact that it is aimed directly at her. There is something familiar about this woman, though I am sure I have never met her before. An irritating itch nags in the back of my mind that something here isn't right. I have been here before, but where am I? I want to turn and take in my surroundings, but am unable to move anything other than my eyes. Time seems to have slowed to a near pause. Glancing at the surface of the desk, I notice a stack of credit card flyers. Oh, that's right. I'm at a bank. One of the few left that actually handle cash instead of digital currency. Why am I at the bank? The memories come slowly, as though I am recollecting them through a vat of honey. The images are hazy at first, but slowly become clearer. I am desperate. The company I worked at collapsed due to fraud. As an accounting associate, I was one of the prime suspects in the case. It has been 2 years since I was accused as an accomplice, and the investigation is still ongoing. In those 2 years, my entire life fell apart. My fiancée left me, taking the word of the media over the man she planned to marry. She took our unborn child with her, refusing to allow me any part in the child's life. Do the investigation. I couldn't find a job. I lost my fiancé, child, and career. I lost all reason to continue to try. All I have left is a roof over my head. And even that will be gone soon, unless I do something. Robbing the bank wasn't a thought-out plan, but rather a decision made in desperation. Why had I thought this would be a good idea? I've never done anything like this before. This isn't me. Who have I become? The eyes of the woman before me begin to widen as she realizes she is staring down the barrel of my gun. Realization, surprise, fear, and then acceptance cross her features within a heartbeat. My hand tenses, my index finger beginning to pull the trigger. Wait, I've been here before. I've done this before. I've killed this woman already. Why am I doing this? For money? Is this really how far I have fallen? Would I really consider killing a woman for whatever change she might have in the drawer? Wait. No. I have already considered this. In fact, I have already done it. I am staring down the sights of my gun into the eyes of a dead woman. That is why she is familiar to me. I know I've killed her, but I don't remember what happened afterwards. Was I arrested? Was I shot? Glancing to my right, I notice a woman in the process of throwing herself over a young boy. Her son, Evan. Evan? Why do I know the boy's name? That isn't all I know. I know that the mother will be so scarred from my actions that she will hide her child away from the world, paranoid and plagued by the idea of some stranger hurting the only family she had left. Evan will spend the rest of his childhood in the foster care system. I've never met them before, So why do I know this? I shift my attention to my left, where a young security guard points his own firearm in my direction, his mouth open in a silent shout. I can see the fear and indecision wrought into his features. He will lose his job and any chance of a healthy life due to my actions today. Finally, I look back to the woman before me. She loses her life because of me. These are my victims. I can see the consequences these innocent bystanders will spend the remainder of their lives trying to cope with. All because I was desperate to pay my rent. I don't want this. I don't want to kill this young woman who has done nothing to wrong me. I don't want to cause the security guard to spend the rest of his life terrified of strangers and loud noises. I don't want Evan to grow up without his mother. My hand relaxes, and the gun soundlessly clatters to the ground before everything fades to black. Looking up from the report scrolling across his tablet, Jared smiled at his supervisor, Dr. Daniels, who had just entered the lab. "Good afternoon, doctor." The subject passed on the first run. His remorse caused a shift in his subconscious, and he dropped the gun before killing the woman this time. Dr. Daniels nodded, a bit of the ever-present tension in his shoulders relaxing. "That is good. Pull him out of the simulator and send the report to the recovery team. With luck, he'll be eligible for reintegration within the next year or so." After receiving the affirmative from his associate, Dr. Daniels headed for the door, sparing one last glance at the man lying on the bed, connected to the simulator unit. The device was revolutionary to solving overcrowding within the municipal system. Based on their progress with therapists and reports provided by behavioral specialists, qualified convicts are removed from their cells and transferred to one of a few facilities housing advanced neurological simulators. Rather than spend years within a cell comprised of bars and mortar, they are instead imprisoned within the walls of their own subconscious. They are then subjected to relive the events of the crime they committed, as well as experience firsthand the impact their misconduct left on their victims. The results were astounding, proving that remorse and guilt, if stressed on a deeply subconscious level, could change the morality of an individual. Rather than spend the remainder of their lives behind bars, these ex-convicts would receive a second chance. Depending on their results after undergoing intense therapy, they would be allowed to reintegrate into a controlled section of society, a sector that was developed specifically for these individuals. They would not be allowed to return to the public, as retribution is still demanded for their actions. They would, however, be provided the opportunity to work in their chosen profession, earn a wage, and make something better of themselves while serving out the remainder of their sentence. Tearing his gaze from the man lying in the hospital bed, Dr. Daniels stepped out of the room and headed for the next lab. Watchers. The asylum's security surveillance room was a claustrophobic chamber adorned with peeling wallpaper, crumbling shelves stacked with aged records, a small wooden desk, and an uncomfortable metal chair that creaked under the most minute amount of weight. A single rotary dial telephone sat on the desk. A thick layer of dust covered every surface but the desk and chair. The dim overhead light bulb flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows across the aging linoleum floor that peeled in the corners. The centerpiece of this dilapidated room was a massive wall lined with outdated grayscale CCTV monitors. Each monitor displayed a different section of the asylum, a haunting panorama of deserted hallways, medical examination rooms furnished with rusting metal beds and equipment, large dining areas, office spaces, and various other rooms possibly used for forms of recreation. The monitors were ancient, relics of a bygone era. Their screens emitted a faint, sickly glow that seemed to exaggerate the shadows lurking in the corners of the room. The images displayed were grainy, distorted, and pixelated. A small handwritten label accompanied each screen, indicating the location of the video feed. The cameras themselves, once cutting-edge technology, were now obsolete and barely functional, occasionally losing connection for a few seconds at a time. The crackling audio of static from the occasional disconnected video feeds added to the eerie ambiance. It was as if the very essence of the asylum had seeped into the wires and circuits, imbuing an unsettling presence into the surveillance system. James was 2 hours into his new job and already regretted accepting the position. As a college dropout, struggling to make ends meet, the job posting for a part-time security surveillance officer with great pay was almost too good to be true. There were no certifications or education required to apply. The agency didn't even require any previous experience. The pay was nearly double the current minimum wage. The only downside to the posting had been the hours. From 9 o'clock at night until 5 in the morning, James was surprised to find he was the only one to accept the position following the interview. Unwilling to let such a good paying opportunity pass, he agreed to all terms he was presented during his interview and had no follow-up questions of his own when asked. As such, he was hired on the spot and given the time and address of his first shift. Looking back, James realized he should have asked at least a few questions, such as where he would be working and why no one else had accepted the position following the interview. Lunaria Sanitarium, built in 1920, was nestled deep within the forests of the Pacific Northwest. The nearest city, taking at least an hour and a half by car, was Portland, Oregon. The hospital consisted of 3 separate buildings. The central 4-story building contained the medical rooms, recreational suites, and other administrative offices. Each 2-story wing building housed bedrooms with minimal furniture, a dining hall complete with rows of tables and chairs, and basements with locked holding rooms. Only the hallway leading to the doors for the holding rooms contained a camera in each basement. Every room in the sanitarium still contained original furniture from the time it was abandoned, as if all inhabitants simply left for the day and never returned. Vacated in the late 50s, the entire property was left untouched for nearly 7 decades. Courtyards, fields, and small farming patches were overgrown, nearly reclaimed by the forest whose land it was built upon. Despite the impending vegetation, the buildings themselves were surprisingly in good condition, despite the rust, mold, and rotting surfaces. Upon relieving the daytime officer at 9 o'clock, a gangly old man who provided no explanation of his duties other than not to fall asleep, James settled in for a long night. The metal chair behind the desk protested against his weight, and he made a mental note to bring a cushion for his next shift, figuring he would need help staying awake and being kept from boredom. James brought a backpack stocked with snacks, energy drinks, his handheld gaming console, and a few books his sister had lent him. He had debated whether or not he would get in trouble for playing games or reading while on duty. But how hard could watching screens of empty rooms be? Surely he would get in more trouble for falling asleep rather than being partially distracted. Gaze darting between monitors on the wall before him, a sense of unease settled deep within his gut. The screens were grainy and out of focus, an occasional ripple in the feed, giving the effect of movement and catching his attention. The wall of monitors was so wide that he had trouble viewing every screen without having to turn his head, causing the screens of the opposite side to disappear from his focus entirely. As the minutes ticked by with no changes, James relaxed and pulled his gaming console from his pack. He kept the volume low, just in case, and was careful to peek at the screens between each level of his game. The few games he owned that didn't require internet connection quickly lost his interest. He glanced at the time on his cell phone. 10:30. An hour and a half into his shift, and he was already bored. As James reached for his backpack, the scratchy sound of static caught his attention. One of the screens in the top row, which was labeled East Wing Dining Hall, showed nothing but black, gray, and white interference. Heart leaping into his throat, James watched as the lines danced across the screen. Less than a handful of seconds later, the feed resumed, and he was presented again with long rows of tables and chairs. Breathing a sigh of relief, James slumped back into his chair, the metal groaning in protest. Waiting for his heart rate to settle, James took in the creepy aspects of the dining hall, showing through the feed. Long, wooden tables made up a majority of the space. looking to be made of one solid piece of wood. James could only imagine how heavy they must be. Chairs dotted the spaces between the tables, all pulled out and looked to have been haphazardly pushed around, a few even laying on their sides. In the far left corner of the room, a single door stood open, leading to the hallway beyond. James's attention fixated on the chairs. Had they been pushed out from the tables before? Racking his memory, he thought that they had been pushed in, not that he had paid any special attention to the small details. Clearing his thoughts with a shake of his head, he pulled one of his energy drinks out and popped the cap. Perhaps he just remembered wrong. While sipping the carbonated liquid energy, James pulled out a notebook and pen and began taking notes on the condition of each room, more for the peace of his own mind and to pass the time than any other reason. Swing a sparrow on a string. Angela opened her eyes to a new day, not knowing if it were morning. There were no windows in her room, and it could have been the middle of the afternoon, or even midnight. She heard no sounds except her own breathing, and when she awoke, she inhaled and exhaled heavily, as if she had just completed a marathon race instead of having slept for hours. Perhaps she had slept for days. She had stopped wondering about time months ago. Now she simply slept for as long as she was able, then stayed awake for as long as was necessary. She knew she would have to eat, that they would soon be coming with food. And had she felt stronger, she might have spat it back at them, as she had done when they first brought her here. But she had swallowed that rage a long time ago. Now, Angela ate whatever morsels they gave her, and recently she had to restrain herself from thanking them. She feared the day might come when she would feel grateful that they had allowed her to live, when she might find herself smiling at them as if she understood and accepted the perfect correctness of her captivity. She looked at herself in the small, cracked mirror above the sink. Although her hair was stringy and unwashed, she remembered how golden it had shimmered in the sun. Her face was still quite pretty, and once she had heard one guard tell another he had never seen eyes quite that blue. The other whispered what a pity it was. If only she had a piece of paper, a pen, even a crayon. Maybe this time she would show them that she could create something useful and lasting that mattered to them, something that in turn would make her matter. When Angela had first arrived, they had eagerly granted the request of the 18-year-old girl and waited to see what gifts her imagination might offer them. She had succeeded only in producing a few formless scrawls that they said were not art, and some rhymeless gibberish that they told her was not poetry. They took away the paper, the pens, and the paintbrushes, and not long ago, the tall blonde guard, who wore the keys around his neck, had asked her if she might like to sing. Any tune would do, he told her. Please, oh please, let me try, Angela had begged. The next day, he brought to her room a small cassette recorder with a blank tape. Perhaps we will find the songbird in you, where we were unable to find the artist. Sing, and we promise to listen, he assured her. For days, Angela sang alone in her room, remembering what her mother had sung to her many years ago. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. A week later, she handed the cassette to the man with the keys and simply said, "Please." He stuffed the tape into his pocket and left without a word. The next day, the guard sat alongside her bed and informed her that he and the others had decided that she was no songbird. For a moment, his words had sounded like an apology. She knew she would never see the tall guard again. The wasted papers that Angela had filled with nonsense and the inarticulate squawks she had tried to pass off as music had convinced them that further efforts on their part would be foolish. From that day forward, the guards who silently delivered her food seemed unwilling to even look at her. Angela heard the key slip into the lock on the other side of the heavy door. She no longer pretended to be asleep when they came, because they did not care whether she were sleeping or awake. One of them always waited outside as the other entered. She heard the heavy jingle of keys and looked up. The keys were around the guard's neck. "You," she said, but the word was only a statement of fact, not sparked with the warmth that accompanies the recognition of a familiar face. Once uttered, the word sounded idiotic. "Yes," he answered, closing the door behind him. He did not look at her as he set the tray of food on the stand alongside her bed. She had expected no further conversation, and when he spoke again, his words startled her. "They told me to say the other guard had caught a flu." He pulled up the small wooden chair and sat, although the chair was too small, and he seemed not to know whether to fold his legs. "There is no flu. They wanted us to talk." His statement was ludicrous. She had not had a conversation with him in months, and those few she remembered had been pitifully brief and one-sided. "I don't understand," she said, as she selected a small bread crust on her tray. She had learned to keep her responses short, for the guards tired of her quickly. "I'd like to know about God," he said, as if this were meant as an answer. "Tell me how you feel about God. Tell me about your religion, your beliefs." "I have no belief in God. I have no religion." "Don't you have some sort of records about that?" She felt immediately sorry she had asked, but the guard ignored the question anyway. He fidgeted in the small chair. "You're an atheist, then? Or an agnostic?" You have opinions regarding God's existence, or the lack of it? He sounded almost hopeful. I'm an apathist. I don't much think about it, she answered as she nibbled at the crust. She picked up a slab of egg yolk with her left hand, ignoring the silverware, leaned her head back, and dropped the yolk into her mouth. Her response oddly pleased him, although he did not smile. An apathist? That was a joke you just said. Admittedly, not a very good one, but it was a joke. Then you have a sense of humor. Tell me another joke. Angela looked hard at the man, not certain about how earnest her guard's question was. A joke? You mean, like, why did the chicken cross the road? The absurdity of her question seemed to increase the guard's excitement. Yes. Yes. Tell me, why did the chicken cross the road? There was anticipation in his voice, as if he sincerely were interested in the chicken's intentions. And when he leaned toward Angela for her response, his face revealed the hint of a smile. Perhaps the chicken was an apathist, she said. The guard's smile disappeared as quickly as if it were erased. That isn't funny. I'm sorry, but that isn't funny at all. His tone became flat, expressionless. He sounded like a man keeping some kind of score. No points for humor. Sorry. Next category. Can we talk politics? He asked. No. Sociology, science, history, law, philosophy. His questions now had become a formality, a checklist to be completed, filed, and forgotten. No. 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 Although Angela could not remember ever having had a discussion this long during her stay here, she wanted this conversation to end. Perhaps I could tell you why the philosopher crossed the road? No, I guess you're right. That wasn't very funny either. I suppose you'll be leaving now. Her question had anticipated his next words. The tall guard rose from the chair with difficulty, trying to maintain his dignity when he could not get up with his first attempt. I have one more question for you, Angela, he said. He had never called her by her name before, and his doing so struck her as odd. He walked to the foot of her bed and turned toward her. Do you know why you are here? He asked this without malice or emotion, with only the desire to know her answer, as he had wanted to know about songbirds and chickens. I'm here because you see me as a useless bird. Having said the words, she knew they had always been on her tongue, waiting to be spoken. I beg your pardon. You know, the sparrow who can no longer fly becomes useless to the other sparrows, a burden to them. I've broken my wing, isn't that right? And the flock has no further need of me. I'm impressed, the guard answered. That is quite a creative analogy from one who knows so little of creativity. He sat on the edge of the bed and moved close to Angela, as if to reveal a secret. Instead, he reached under the blanket and grabbed hold of her right hand yanking it out from where she had kept it hidden. He held her arm straight up, and the pain caused her to wince. But this isn't exactly a broken wing, is it, Angela? It's a wilted arm, a useless limb. It is not pleasant to look at. It serves no function, and it belongs to you. It is you. The words came in furious bursts now, like machine gun pellets, and he shook her withered limb as he spoke. You see yourself as a wounded sparrow, do you? What happens if we take that sparrow and tie her leg to a string and swing her around in circles in a desperate attempt to make her fly? She struggles against hope to use her wings, her useless wings. And meanwhile, we swing her around and around and around, wasting our energy, wasting our time. And in the end, when we stop swinging her, she comes crashing down to earth anyway. Our time has been wasted. Her hopes have been destroyed. What is the point? Why even bother? He let go of her arm, allowing it to drop. For a moment, Angela stared at the shrunken arm as if it were a foreign thing that did not belong in the bed with her. She spoke without removing her eyes from it. A sparrow who can no longer fly can sing. And if she can't sing, she can still feel, can still love? The guard interrupted. That's exactly right, Angela. We asked this sparrow to sing, and she could not. But we realized she may be capable of love. The kind of love that could only result in frustration for her. Because the real question is she capable of being loved? Do the words she writes encourage love? Does her beauty or intellect in any way inspire it? It is unlikely that anyone would even try to love her because of that hideous limb. Not that all physical impediments are repulsive. Perhaps if she were only blind. Stop. Please, stop. Angela pleaded. Her brief taste of defiance had made her want to gag. You want to cover your ears, don't you? You want to block out the words, make me go away. Maybe you would even like to strike me, he continued. But you can't do it, can you? That limb just lies there like a dead weight. Do you see my point? I have my other arm, whose only function is to hide its companion. No, Angela, I'm sorry, but the time has come for us to stop swinging the sparrow's string. His anger slowly dissolved, and he fell silent for a moment. He attempted to hold her wilted hand in his, but she pulled it away. Instead, he took her other hand. But first, I have something I want to show you. Something you need to see. He sat on the bed and placed her fingers on his left leg below the knee. Rub your hand along my leg, Angela. Does the calf feel peculiar to you? Congenital defect, they called it. Like they called yours. The leg is gone. at least from the knee down. Amazing what they can do with prosthetics today. But you see, I have my particular talents. I happen to be quite good at drawing people out, at enabling them to find a way to compensate for their physical shortcomings. And I can be quite decisive when called upon to make the kind of decisions that others would find distasteful. No one ever asked me to sing or to fly. But when they came for me, I simply told them what I could do. Angela struggled to pull her hand free as her anger rose inside her like hot bile. But you also decide who is to be exterminated. You decide who the state no longer regards as useful. What gives you the right? This gives me the right, he shouted, his breath hot on her face as he tapped her hand on the hard wood of his prosthetic leg. This has forced me to find my usefulness to others, just as your pathetic limb has forced you to admit that you have none. And I have no intention of relinquishing my usefulness by allowing you to continue your hollow existence. I refuse not to matter. The guard's renewed anger seemed to embarrass him, and he turned away from Angela. He ran his fingers through his blonde hair in an attempt to collect himself. And when he again looked down at his leg, he noticed that Angela's hand was grasping it. Angela knew he had been unaware of her touch until he had looked. When his eyes locked with hers, her mouth curled in a bitter smile. "I feel this," she said, as she ran the tiny hand of the wilted arm along his wooden leg. "I feel this with both of my hands, even the one you call useless. Tell me what you feel when I touch you. Does this prosthetic device extend all the way to your heart?" Angela tapped on the artificial limb as if she were expecting a reflexive kick. "A curious question," he answered. "You might have made a fine idealist if you had believed in God." She moved close to his face and whispered, "To get to the other side, that is why a chicken would cross the road, isn't it?" He paused for a moment to look at her. "Such blue eyes," he said. "Such exquisitely beautiful blue eyes." He called for the guards to take her, and within moments, 3 entered the room, and another 2 waited by the doorway. She presented no struggle and went quietly with them. She wondered as they walked if one of them would take her hand. Cockroach girl. The floor underneath. Barry shuddered and swayed as they took a tight corner. The clattering whoosh of the dark tunnel drowned out the tired silence of the other commuters. Barry's sweaty hand threatened to slide loose from its cold metal pole, so he adjusted his grip and tried not to think about what had made it so sticky. Multiple people had relieved themselves in this car over the course of the day. The sickly sweet mixture of vomit and tangy excrement churned his stomach. threatening to dislodge the chopped salad he'd had for lunch that afternoon. Barry felt the gray-haired woman next to him shift away from his lifted arm in disgust. He enjoyed the small reprieve of the starchy fabric peeling away from the wetness of his underarm, where it had been chafing all day. There was nothing to be done, he thought bitterly, unless she wanted him falling into her lap. He could smell the baby powder wafting up from her hair, and the crusty perfume from a bottle that should have been thrown out years ago. Barry threatened to go flaccid at the idea of her wrinkled, fat body jiggling under her itchy wool cardigan. She should be so lucky, he thought with a sneer. Barry turned his attention back to the more desirable object of his affection, the girl at the other end of the car. He felt hot blood rush toward the front of his groin, making it bulge against his tight polyester dress pants so hard he could feel the metal zipper of his fly dig into him. Barry couldn't take his eyes off her proper legs pushed together in an effort to take up as little space as possible and attract as little attention as possible. Her tight, office-appropriate skirt hugged her hips and thighs, exposing bare legs, freshly shaven. He could tell from here she squirmed under his gaze. Barry adjusted his pants, even though no one on the bus was looking at him. He liked feeling like a potential threat. Barry knew he wasn't trash like the vermin around him. They all followed the rules. They went to work in their maze-like offices. They ate paste from tubes that barely resembled food. Humans were supposed to be apex predators, but the people who pressed in around him, jostled by the winding track, were so distant from their glorious biological potential, so detached from the instincts sharpened by thousands of generations of violence, that they had allowed their senses to dull irreparably from disuse, content to compete for scraps like the insects they were. But not Barry. He was in touch with his higher animal self. He used his God-given senses every day. And today, they were homing in on a target worthy of his attention. A girl he could tell would be a challenge. A girl who would force him to prove his manhood. A girl unlike the rest of them. This girl had her attention not on her phone, but on a book open in her lap. Barry craved the opportunity to see the title she was so engrossed in. He made a mental note to get closer to her when she got up for her stop. He also felt a surge of jealousy towards that book. He wanted to be the one who was in her lap, pulling her head back by the hair, taking what was his. The train jostled again as it went through another turn. The girl shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She knew he was watching her, yet she refused to meet his gaze. Barry found himself starting to get angry at her insolence. He deserved her attention. As if in response to his escalating need, the girl brought her hand up to her skirt. Barry's attention became rapt and utterly focused. The hairs on his arm stood up in arousal as he watched her, not daring to move, wondering if this was real. The girl reached underneath her tight little skirt and squirmed around. She had to be putting on a show. Otherwise, why would she do this? Barry glanced around, checking to see if anyone else was watching. But no one seemed to notice. The girl reached her hand all the way up between her legs, her expression unchanging, her eyes never leaving her book. Barry was now stroking himself outside his pants. He didn't care if anyone saw him. She was making him do this. The filthy little. The girl removed her hand from between her legs and pulled her arm out from under her skirt. She was holding something in the flat palm of her hand. Barry squinted and peered closer to see what it was. He stepped back in shock and confusion. Sitting in the girl's hand, antennae twitching, was a thick, 4-inch long, glittering cockroach. Its hard-shelled body, spiny legs, and beady head were unmistakable. The girl let it fall to the floor of the train, all without removing her eyes from her book. The cockroach skittered towards Barry. He let out an involuntary yelp that caused some passengers to finally look up and notice him. A businessman unceremoniously stepped on the cockroach, smushing its guts into an unrecognizable blob. The girl never looked up from her book. Barry wasn't a bad guy. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he needed answers. So, when the girl got off at her stop, he followed her. They emerged from the underground station onto a dark street. There was no moon out that night, and the glow of the street lamps were obscured by overgrown trees. The girl walked ahead of him, handbag slung over her shoulder. When they were finally far enough from the main road, where no one could see or hear them, he picked up his pace to catch up with her. Barry's footsteps crunched the leaves and twigs on the sidewalk, so his approach was anything but silent. He could see her tense up. Barry grabbed her by the shoulder and spun her around to look at him. He took a step back in surprise. There was no fear in the girl's eyes. It unsettled him. They usually looked more scared. He pressed on anyway. "What was that back there?" Barry asked. "What was what?" "That thing. Did you pull a cockroach out from between your—" Barry gestured helplessly at his own crotch. He couldn't believe what he was asking. "I think you should leave me alone." The girl turned around to continue walking, but Barry wasn't done with her. He grabbed her arm. "I think you should answer my question." "I don't owe you anything," the girl said, looking him dead in the eye. This disturbed Barry more than he cared to admit. They usually struggled to avoid his gaze. He was in uncharted territory, but he couldn't turn back now. His cock twitched hungrily. Maybe this could be fun, Barry tried to convince himself. He could break her. That would make this feel more earned, more challenging. He had been starting to get bored with his targets. Centuries of comfort and complacency had left the modern woman weak and pathetic. "I'm not done with you yet," he told her. Barry pushed the girl up against the retaining wall next to the sidewalk. This was usually when they screamed, but the girl didn't scream. She pushed him back. "Get off of me," she said forcefully, but Barry would not. He could not. He had come so far. He needed to know. He wasn't just here to satisfy his own primal needs. No, not this time. He needed to know what she had down there, what she was hiding from him, how she was able to produce. The girl kneed him in the groin, but Barry was not an amateur at this. He expertly leaned back to avoid a direct hit while still keeping his forearm against her chest, pinning her up against the wall. He pushed her knee to the side. "Hold still," Barry told her through gritted teeth. He was starting to get angry. "This will all be over soon." At last, he managed to reach up under her skirt and pull her underwear to the side. She had stopped struggling. He was grateful. Once they were convinced that there was no way out of this, they always ended up enjoying it. They would never admit it, but he could tell that they did. The girl was looking at him again, calmly. "Don't do that," Barry told her. "Don't do what?" "Look at me like that." The girl laughed. "You can't control me," she told him. "You're a dead man." Barry slapped her across the face. It was his turn to laugh. It was a humorless, forced laugh, mostly designed to disguise his fear. "You don't know who I am," he told her, more to convince himself than her. "You don't know my name. They'll never find me." Barry put his fingers in the space between her legs, relaxing into his victory. She was smooth, freshly shaven, just as he had predicted. But there was something else in there he could feel as he unzipped his pants and got himself out and ready. Something plasticky. A Nuva ring, perhaps. Or he didn't have much time to guess. The thing crawled straight out of the girl's vagina and onto his hand. Barry recoiled and flung it to the ground with a yell. What the fuck?" "Does that answer your question?" said the girl. "Crazy bitch." Barry's head was spinning. He had no idea how she did this magic trick, and he had no desire to stick around and find out. He grabbed his dick to put it back into his pants, but the girl grabbed onto him harder. "Hang on," she said. "I'm not done with you yet." She parted her knees invitingly. The girl once again pulled her lacy underwear to the side, fully exposing herself. Barry watched in horror as a beady little head and spiny legs clawed their way out of her, the antennae releasing themselves from her depths with a little bounce. It eagerly ran down the inside of her thigh, down her leg, all the way to the ground. It was followed by another and another and another. Some of them scampered down her thighs to the ground, then over to Barry's shoes, then up his pant leg. He tried to pull away, but she had his hard dick in her hand with a vice grip and wouldn't let him go. Why did it stay hard while he was so afraid? Why wouldn't his body listen to him? Barry didn't want this. Other cockroaches climbed out of her and crawled up her thigh, over the edge of her skirt, up her chest, and onto her shoulder, down her arm, all the way to his exposed flesh. They swarmed all over his body. Barry screamed. They made their way up his neck to his face, their delicate, spiny legs tingling his skin, causing Barry to jerk in violent fear and revulsion. He shut his mouth tight and continued to scream with it closed. No matter. The insects pushed in between, prying his lips open. Barry finally succeeded in yanking his penis out of her hands. He didn't care if it broke or if she peeled all of the skin off of it. He just needed to get out of there. But the cockroaches kept coming. The swarm grew bigger and bigger, finding their way underneath his clothes, into every orifice available to them. They overpowered him. Barry couldn't hold them out any longer. He covered his ears, but that left his eyes and nose and rectum exposed. Barry stumbled to his feet and fell to the ground. He choked on them. He could feel them with every sense of his body and brain, wriggling their way inside of him, unwelcome, filthy, suffocating. Time slowed for Barry. He knew only fear and blinding pain. The girl watched, impassive, as Barry lay twitching on the ground. During those final minutes of consciousness, Barry was freed from any stress, repression, self-loathing, or desire. It took 7 minutes for him to die. After Barry's body grew still, the girl picked her purse up off the ground where it had fallen. She hung it back on her shoulder and continued up the sidewalk on her way home. She left her babies behind to nibble at his corpse. Eventually, they got bored. The cockroaches scampered off into the night to scavenge for bits of food hoisted into the dumpsters behind the dimly lit bars and tightly locked apartment buildings. Their grotesque image kept them safe. Fear kept them hidden. Disgust allowed them to move freely, unbothered in the shadows of the city. Like the girl, they were survivors. These old bones, flowery carvings, adorned the strangely shaped old furniture and caught Jacob's eye. Happy cherubs were encrusted with dust, and on the walls, the springtime imagery of oil paintings was draped in cobwebs hanging like veils. The floorboards creaked, and the weight of dust and neglect hung everywhere. But still, Jacob couldn't help but explore and get lost in the place, looking for creepy old things and ghosts. At last, he made his way up to the attic, which was pierced here and there by shafts of dust-specked morning light shining through the windows. It was filled with boxes and countless old and broken things, and it smelled musty and faintly of the sweet smell of rot and aged tobacco. Altogether, the scent spoke of a long history and was not entirely unpleasant. Stacks of magazines were spilled on the ground, and a ratty mannequin was wearing a straw-colored blonde wig. On one side, a line of well-worn teddy bears of various sizes stared back at him. Suddenly, his foot slipped on something, and looking down, he saw the parchment-like paper of architectural diagrams lying buried under a thick layer of dust. Then, at a small desk nearby, a black and white photo album lay open, revealing pictures of distant relatives he had never heard of. All in all, it felt like a strange old museum filled with oddities from centuries past. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something truly creepy was indeed hidden here, and he wasn't sure that he wanted to play hide and seek with it. He was about to turn and leave when suddenly he felt goosebumps on his neck. He heard a girl's voice sweetly humming a song he did not know. Then he saw her playfully skipping towards him, wearing an old-fashioned dress. She shimmered transparently, light blue and opalescent. She was swinging her arms by her sides, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she peered at him. And somehow, he forgot to be afraid. "Hi, my name's Jacob. Aren't you a ghost?" he asked her, his brow furrowed. "It's so very nice to meet you, Jacob. I'm Mildred," the little girl said elegantly, before curtsying. "And yes, I am a ghost. Isn't it obvious?" she added, with a teasing smirk that somehow got under his skin. "Don't tease me. It's not every day that one meets a ghost. You know, that's true. And in my case, you can only see me on Halloween. It's when I get to play for just one day a year," Mildred said. And then she jumped up into the air, her ethereal substance warping and elongating, rapidly funneling into the ear of a nearby teddy bear. "Why, hello there," she said in a mock teddy bear voice, waving the bear's paw. "That's so cool," Jacob said. "Yes, it's quite fun. I can animate a lot of things. You want I should go into your parents' car next?" she asked, with a mischievous grin. "Nah, I don't think they'd appreciate that," Jacob said pensively. "But let's totally find other things to try." Then, as Mildred stepped out of the bear, Jacob paused a while before speaking. "Hey, why don't you come trick-or-treating with me tonight? You can use the biggest bear and pretend it's a costume." "What a great idea. I can't believe I never thought of that. Or maybe I just never had anyone to go with," Mildred said, her expression growing bashful. "Well, you've got me now, Mildred. Jacob, come down. We're going to go visit the town," his mother called out from the floor below. "Hey, I'll be back real soon, okay?" Jacob said. Right. I'll be here waiting for you, Mildred answered with a nod. Later in the day, it had grown dark, and Jacob came up the ladder, holding a lantern in one hand. My mom's got a bunch of candles burning downstairs. She thought that it would be cool to use candles inside the pumpkins. Some of them are scented, but I hope you don't mind the smell. Your mom sounds pretty fun. And also, I can't smell, silly. I'm a ghost. Right, Jacob said, slapping his forehead. Hey, Jacob. I have a secret to show you. How about I show you my favorite toy? Mildred skipped over to the back of the room and into a large chest hidden behind piles of boxes. The chest creaked open, and Jacob went over to see what was inside. He was taken aback at seeing an old skeleton. It seemed small, like a child skeleton, and he realized this was where the sickly smell of rot had been coming from. Mildred, is it yours? Jacob asked, eyes wide open, his throat growing dry, and his pulse running a little faster. Yes, it is. Unfortunately, I died here under circumstances most foul. It's why I'm a ghost haunting this place, you silly boy, she said teasingly. But that was a long time ago. Since then, I've grown so bored, and this was one of my most fun toys. Truly, I've had such fun scaring people who saw me through the attic windows, she added with a giggle. I guess that could be fun, Jacob said, unsure what to say. Then she continued, but here, I'll show you. Now, don't you get spooked on me, she said, jumping into the skeleton. There was a sudden buzz of static electricity, and Jacob's lantern shut off. The room was now only lit by the otherworldly blue glow of the animated skeleton. Isn't it fun and creepy? He heard Mildred's voice say with a giggle, seeing the little girl's skeleton come out of the chest and walk towards him in the dark with a lurching gait. Jacob was seized with a sudden terror. Had she been friendly all along, just to lure him here and do goodness knew what to him? Jacob ran away, screaming and knocking things over. Immediately, the old bones clattered to the floor. I didn't mean to scare you so much. Please, please come back, he heard Mildred's voice say with a whimper as he hurried down the attic steps. Please, Jacob, he heard her beg again from further away, her voice no less desperate for being fainter. It was only with great effort that he finally screwed on his courage and came back up the ladder. His lantern was lit again when he carefully emerged into the attic. Finally, he saw Mildred waiting for him there, wiping ghostly tears from her cheeks, an apologetic look on her face. I was so worried you wouldn't come back, and I'm so sorry for scaring you. I guess I came up with some strange games all by myself. It's okay, and I'm so sorry you were lonely, Mildred. But now you've got me to talk to. Oh, won't you please come by and talk to me again later? I can still speak to you on other days, even though you won't be able to see me. I promise I'll come by as often as I can. Jacob said solemnly, and Mildred gave him a sweet smile. "Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, Jacob," she said softly. "Want to go trick-or-treating? Get into the bear, and I'll meet you outside in half an hour." "Deal," Mildred answered with a grin.